We are now live, Julie, live, unedited, on the interwebs. This is real deal. I kind of appreciate that, we went from doing kind of more lecture style webinars back in the day to now just having something a little more casual, a little more conversational, I think more engaging. The fact that we can do this and we can sort of see what people are saying, that we can engage with people as we go through this, I think is super interesting. So I'm excited to do this. And, well, post-pandemic, we're still doing these from home. So come as you are.
Come as you are. Pants or no pants.
Pants or no pants, no telling, no telling. Well, I want to welcome everyone who's joining us. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. My name is Matt Heinz from Heinz Marketing, and I'll let Julie introduce herself here in a second. Very excited for us to walk through a number of best practices and strategies around customer-led growth, and just, in a tough market, Julie, where a lot of people are having to cut back on budget, there is enormous opportunity right underneath your fingertips that you can take advantage of to grow your business. So excited to talk a little more about that. I'm Matt. Julie, introduce yourself as well, please.
Thanks for having me here. It's a great follow-up to our last live podcast the other day. So I'm Julie Persofsky. I recently founded a company called Achieve Exponential Growth. It's a boutique advisory, so boutique that you're working with just me. And really the focus, I've learned in, a couple decades of working at startups and in SaaS tech-enabled companies, your greatest source of growth, revenue growth, is from your customers. Constantly, me and my team on the customer success side or account management side would outsell our sales teams. And so, especially in today's market where, I think, what was it, like 6 months ago, I called you up, Matt. I'm like, hey, how's account-based marketing with lead gen? Is it slowing down a little bit? New leads slowing down? How about we do this with customers? Because customers are warm leads, if you think about them that way.
Well, and when you look at what a lot of companies do, they spend so much time and effort, and most of their team is focused on driving net new pipeline and driving new people to the sales team. And then when you look, okay, what are you doing to delight your customers? What are you doing to, engage customers as advocates, as referrals? What are you doing to drive land and expand and more proactive retention and renewals? You get a lot of blank stares, right?
Yeah.
There's a newsletter, there's an 800 number, there may be an occasional event, but it's just random acts of whatever that don't really build up into anything. So excited to be able to talk about that today. For those of you that are joining us, would love to hear from you, where you're from, where you're joining us from around the world. Put that in the comments. Want to make this as conversational as we can. Here's a quick agenda for what we want to do today. We're just going to talk a little bit broadly about what we're seeing right now here at the end of September in B2B. We're going to cover a few different areas around the customer success and marketing dynamic, what it looks like today, where Julie sees that going. So we got a lot that we want to try to cover here. A couple quick housekeeping things. I'm going to try to watch the chat actively. So if you have comments, if you agree, if you disagree, if you have rebuttals, if you want to have a question for Julie or myself, please throw that into the chat and we'll make sure we get to that as well. I guess our first polling question, Julie, and sort of we're doing this. We're doing this kind of just put in the chat style. Are we in a recession? And I don't care what the Fed say, but I feel like if I look at the layoffs happening across tech companies, if I look at the slowdown in a lot of areas since last spring, I would say since mid-spring 2022, it sure feels like a very different market than we saw before. Sort of curious to hear for those of you that are joining in the chat what you think, but then Julie, curious what you think as well.
Yeah, I'm curious what people think for in a recession. I mean, here's the thing. Feel like if we looked at people's Amazon or like past orders, we would be able to tell that we're not in a recession, right? Recession is when spending really slows down. Yeah. People are still going out for dinner. They're still spending money. I live in Whistler. It's still packed here, right? Mm-hmm. On a weekend, you go to the village and people are out. So from that standpoint, not like we're quite there, but like, we're in a slowdown for sure, right? We're definitely in this slowing down. And I think it's almost like, can you say like we're in a B2B spending recession, but I don't see that translating to personal lives just yet. And maybe this is a small bubble I'm living in right now, but
Well, I think it's indicative that the markets are complicated, right? Like you can have valuations on startups and companies pre-public, pre-IPO that are depressed for a variety of reasons, but then the consumer money is still flowing. It could be that you see the opposite moving forward, right? Where, at least in the US, is student loans payments start coming due again next month. I think there's a lot of things that could dip into consumer recession while B2B and startups start to see a little bit of a comeback as well. It's interesting though, like whenever we see these pauses, and for whatever reason it's happening, like we've got companies that are like tightening their belts, that are cutting budget, that are starting to lengthen out the amount of cash they have available. It just seems like a lot of companies are still not embracing the opportunity on the customer side, and in others sort of saying like, we have no choice but to now focus on this. Would love to have you talk about kind of what you've seen in your work with Winning by Design and now in your new firm as well. These companies that spend so much time and attention on net new leads and are starting to pivot to the opportunity that has always existed on the customer side.
Yeah. And I think, look, I also feel like companies are just smarter about this, right? We saw this a decade ago, and companies still, they didn't push on the brakes fast enough. And we saw a lot of companies go bankrupt. And so first of all, I think companies are just saying, and boards are saying, hey, we see the writing on the wall, let's conserve cash. But you can't conserve cash and stall your growth.
Right.
And so we all know that it's easier to sell to someone who already has you in as a budget line item, or referral leads close. I think it was like back at the days when I worked at Influitive and we did advocate marketing, referrals would close at a 40% higher rate than any other lead. It's massive. And so if you think about that conversion rate, and you think about shifting spend and shifting marketing attention to getting those referrals, or using your existing customers and making sure that every call has an early reference. I like to think about references as like we always save them as sales reps, right? And it's like, we're going to just, harbor our 7 great customers and use them when we need to. But if you actually nurture, your referenceable customers and just make them part of the sales process, those leads close at a higher clip and faster.
Yeah.
And so this concept around advocacy and around, driving, thinking about your customers as its own like pipeline for expansion sales, this gets really interesting. But marketing is still so focused on net new leads, and rightly so. That's what they're measured on today.
Well, rightly so, if that's what they're measured on today. But, I think I hear I've had a nickel for every time I was in a room when someone said, our best leads are contact us leads. How do we get more contact us leads? Like I hear the same thing when I talk here about referrals, right? Referrals, like you've got someone that can already vouch for you. So like some of that uncertainty and doubt, some of the friction that exists in some of the sales process has already been handled before you even hear about them. Saw a stat recently from Forrester, though, that only 26% of companies put as much emphasis on developing customer advocates as they do creating net new business.
Yeah.
And you think about how much it costs to go get net new business, how much I've seen so many stats that validate sort of the bloat we have seen in 2023 around the amount of time and effort it takes to generate the same results from these clogged digital channels. And yet that's where 3/4 of marketers are focused, as opposed to building out advocates and driving predictable, repeatable pipeline from existing customers. We're not even talking about, Julie, sort of land and expand. We're not even talking about renewals, retention. We're just talking about developing advocates that can generate pipeline for you.
Right. So that definitely helps on the lead gen front, right? Let's get a new source of leads from a pool of, close connected customer prospects. But I think that's the other point too, right? Like if I'm a head of marketing and I'm walking into an executive meeting or a board meeting and I'm going to miss my number, you could go in and say, this is how I'm missing my number. Or I can go in and say, here's how my team is supporting us reaching our company number. Mm-hmm. And yeah, maybe I'm not going to hit my new lead targets and my MQL target, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to contribute to this amount of revenue. And you mentioned like, that's not even retention, right? Why isn't marketing involved in retention? And I think there's 2 main reasons I see this happening. Can I share this now? I'm kind of skipping ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
there's two main reasons I see marketing not get involved in the world of retention. Because at the end of the day, like, it's not as sexy as bringing in new leads, but gosh, like, keeping a customer for an extra year is cha-ching. It's profits, right?
Mhm.
Like, that is like, it is free money for this company. And so, one, your customer success team does not want you touching their customers. And so
Mhm.
that is like, if I could wish for one thing in B2B SaaS, like amongst the teams, like we always talked about sales and marketing getting along and like calling it marketing. Let's get marketing and customer success to get along and to be on the same, team here, because marketing has a lot of creative elements that they can bring to the table to help customer success teams. And like, customer success needs to just let it go a little, right? And say, you know what? I'm okay getting a little bit of help here. I don't have to do it all by myself. But then the second thing that marketer, they just are like, well, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But you do know what to do. It's just like, think for a second. If I were to create different campaigns and different communications and different programs for my customers to help them love the company I'm with, what would I do? And there's so much that you can do that your customer success team just doesn't have capacity to do.
I want to throw this poll question up because I think this relates to what we're talking about here. I'd love to hear from those of you that are joining us live. What does your customer success team own in your organization? And you can check all that apply if there's more than one that reflects here. Julie, what you just described in terms of the relationship and the constraints sometimes that come from customer success sounds very much like sometimes the constraints we see from sales when marketing says, hey, I want to help you with your named accounts. I want to help you grow your named accounts. And sometimes sales will say, well, no, we'll do those on our own. Thanks. We don't want you meddling with those. That seems to speak to a broader, deeper lack of alignment and cooperation that needs to be solved. Can that be solved with a playbook? Does that need to be solved at the executive level? Like, how do you address that?
It's a trust thing. It's always trust, right? You don't want someone getting involved with your account where they're going to mess it up, right? And so, first things first, and we used to do this at Eloqua, right? So let's just go back like a ridiculously long time ago, when the first thing we needed to do to actually get, sales and marketing to just agree on lead nurture was to just get everyone in a room together and talk about what we're going to do here, right?
Yeah.
Not talk about how can marketing get involved. So maybe marketing doesn't get involved, but how can marketing help in terms of maybe it's resources? Like, let's talk about what are some of the challenges that you're having with these accounts. And it's almost like I do this with my 12-year-old, right? At bedtime. It's like, I want him to divulge everything to me. And he's like, well, I don't want to tell you anything because you're just going to meddle, right? You're going to tell my teacher, you're going to call this parent, whatever. And it's like, here's a free zone. I'm not going to ask you a single question unless you give me permission to do so. And then we've created this safe space for him to tell me whatever. It's great. Top tip here for parents. Please. So go into your meeting, your sales meeting, your customer success meeting. I'm not going to do anything. Okay. I'm here to help. I'm here to share ideas. I'm here to brainstorm.
Right.
And just collaborate with you. And if something comes out where I can help you, I'm going to ask permission, because marketing sometimes doesn't, right? Marketing sometimes goes off and emails a whole list of people. I'm sure salespeople, especially on this call, if they're here, can relate. They email and you're like, what did you just do? Right. And so I'm not going to do anything, but let's chat. Let's have a brainstorming, collaborative conversation here. And if there's something that comes out of it where we can support you, that's great. If not, like, at least I've supported you in some way.
Yeah. Totally agree. I'm going to pull this poll question back up just so we can sort of reference what we're seeing come in through the comments. A little bit all of the above, right? I mean, it's pretty well split across these. Appreciate Real sort of admitting like, yeah, really not sure. Not sure what they're focused on, right? And it's sort of, it's a common answer. You're not alone. I like Stephanie says it really depends on the account, which is interesting. I'm curious, how do you see, I mean, Julie, you do this all day long. Like, where do you see the most common answers here? And what depending on where people are, what's the next step to sort of address this?
We're seeing a good map here of what reality looks like in terms of it's not consistent.
Yeah.
And so, I often think people ask me, I think the most common question I get asked is, what should my CS team look like? What should they be responsible for? And I always say it kind of depends on the DNA of your team, right? Are they good at selling? Is it a complicated sale? Do we need what type of involvement and what type of sales skills do we need to have in order to actually do an upsell or potentially a cross sell? But I will say, customer success must have some sort of target and compensation around expansion, whether it's through a CSQL or upsell targets or partnership with an account management. And I think sometimes it does depend on the size of the account, right? If it's a named account, you're typically going to have, or you should have, an account manager really working that account, because there's so much potential. On the smaller accounts, maybe it's just some usage and those types of small upsells. That's super easy to do in customer success, and even through some product-led growth potentially. But that's important. But align on it, right? As marketing, how are you supposed to help if you don't even know what this renewal expansion motion looks like?
Yeah, I think that's super important. I think this opportunity, I'm not going to call it a problem, this opportunity of collaboration across departments is not going away. It's only going to become more and more table stakes for how companies work together. We've seen it for years as companies adopt an account-based approach to driving demand at the top of the funnel, that isn't just, marketing going and doing their campaigns and throwing leads at sales. It's very much a collaborative effort, not just between sales and marketing, but sales, marketing, partner ecosystems, etc. And so the rules of engagement, the who's doing what, there's sometimes putting egos and fiefdoms aside and realizing we're doing this as a team sport now becomes really important. I want to pivot real quick to Andrew's comment here, who just brought up this idea of sort of a lack of customer success stories, right? So, having happy customers, but either not having a quantified result or not having enough documented that could be shared. I hear that a lot, right? Like, how do you help companies address that? How do they either collect more of those or find ways to leverage more of those success stories in the sales process?
Yeah, and I think this is part of where this whole remote work from home culture has really hurt companies in a lot of ways, because we're not hearing the wins. We're not overhearing what's happening on the calls at the desk, next to us. Again, I'm going to go back to Eloqua, because I've never seen a company do customer stories this way. We used to have this event the last Friday of every month, and anyone, Eloquens will all relate to this. It was so cool. It was called, I'm such a nerd. It was so cool. Okay. It was called Club SM, Solutions Managers, because that's what we were called before customer success was an actual thing. And we would have this red rope, so it made it look exclusive. Anyways, and we would all get together and have like a drink, and we would just tell customer stories. That's it. And, there were a couple of remote people, so we would pass the BlackBerry around on speakerphone to the person talking.
You're dating yourself, Julie.
Yeah.
The BlackBerry.
It's all, yeah. But we would just tell these wins, and it was not scalable, but it was just like we created this customer-centric culture because of our customer storytelling time. And that didn't have to be this massive, like big, huge win. It could be little wins. And those little wins are actually the gold nuggets that salespeople and customer success people can use to win deals, because it's not the grand story. It's like this one little nugget here and there that you can all of a sudden, like, you tuck all these into your back pocket, and it's like, oh, so-and-so said this about this customer, and you can pull them out. And it's hard when you're just sharing it in Slack and things like that. So again, it's not super scalable. And, of course, everyone wanted to come, devs even, and product and whoever, because just understanding what's happening in the customers, with your customers, is so valuable to everyone at the company. And so as much as you possibly can, do a storytelling time, low pressure, get people in a room together, or, in a virtual room, a virtual space, make it fun, and have someone even just start documenting it, because and telling stories the way people want to hear them. right? It's not robotic, right? Those case studies that are like, so you can tell maybe AI wrote them, just make it more personal, right? People want to buy from and relate to personal stories.
I really like the way you described all that. I think, what I took away from that is that you don't have to make it too formal. You don't have to make it too big a deal. Sometimes small nuggets of information, a quote, a stat, like something that is informally shared, but you've got more of those and can share those more frequently versus having to worry about the one big glossy case study that makes it seem like a bigger deal too, that makes it seem like it just becomes more of a hurdle. And sometimes people just need, like, the barrier of what people need to see is oftentimes really small to say, okay, yeah, I'll pursue this a little further.
And then you don't have to ask permission.
Oh, it's true. Storytelling. All right. So I want to go back. We started to get into sort of the dynamics inside of organizations. We've forever have talked about sales and marketing, cats and dogs. I want to talk about sort of this relationship between CS and marketing a little further. So again, this is a non-scientific poll. So we're just going to ask you to throw this into the chat.
And it's not really a poll because you can't push, like if you're trying to push the screen, it doesn't work. You just got to throw your letter into the chat.
Yeah, you got to actually type it. And you can type more than one letter. There are not really any rules to this. And if we didn't nail in A through E what your biggest obstacle is, I'd very much like to hear what that is. F is okay. You can say something else, or you can tell us what the something else is. I think, if you've been doing this for a while, like many of these, letters, you sort of have scar tissue from having to deal with this. We can talk about best practices, but sometimes we learn just as much from dumpster fires and cautionary tales. So would be curious, Julie, among these areas, what are some of the biggest constraints to these teams working more productively together?
I'm going to go back to trust. I'm going to go back to, I'm sorry, I might mess the pronunciation of your name, Rashia. This concept about being resistant to change. I love my colleagues in customer success, and there are some incredibly innovative people in customer success. And there are also a bunch of people who are still very resistant to change and, a collaborative approach. And I get it. There's scar tissue. It sucks to have to be in what, if anyone's lived through a churn Mageddon where you're just like, it's just coming at you, and we're probably in it right now too, right? And so marketers, have empathy for your CS team, right? It is so hard to be on, that line where it's like your green customers, you don't think you have to worry about, call you up and they're going to churn. Like, it is gut wrenching and it is so hard, and you don't have to deal with that in marketing, right? Like, you don't have to put your blood, sweat, and tears into an account for a year or 2 years and then have them leave you and know that affects your whole KPIs and everything. And it's exhausting. And so be empathetic and be supportive and face the conversation and from that standpoint.
What if there isn't a CS team? I think there's some growth phase companies that put so much of a focus on net new that there isn't really that developed team yet. It seems like that's a problem and an opportunity, right? Like, if you're at a point where you haven't really developed out that success team, to get that from the get-go to be a collaborative effort, maybe it's even a marketing driven effort that sort of continues the through line of a story, of a message, the sort of value prop that kind of reinforces the why for those customers as well. Curious your thoughts, Julie, like if you're building this from scratch or sort of just saying, I'm going to blow something up and redo it, like, where do you start?
It's interesting. And in all of the companies I've been at, customer success was one of the first hires. So, and maybe that's because like I, as a customer success professional, I also have a marketing background. And so I did a lot of, if you hire, your first executives, they're doing a lot of everything, right? But, how do you not create a space to hold your customers and understand and build that customer experience and that customer journey? Now, the caveat is, if it's a true product-led growth company, then you're thinking about the customer experience and you're just trying to build that into the product the same way you would build that into the sales process. So there's that element of it, but start thinking about those moments that matter, no matter who's doing it. So if you don't have customer success, what are the moments of impact? What are the moments that matter across the customer journey? And have you built in However, through customer success people or process that your product does, have you built that in to create a great experience that drives impact ongoing? Like you can't just have impact after onboarding. You have to continuously remind customers about the impact that they're achieving and the potential impact that they could achieve if they use their product for the full extent.
When we first started hearing frothiness around the ABM acronym, the account-based marketing, I think, one of my common refrains was, this isn't a campaign, this is a culture change. This has to be a different way of doing business. And I think we're maybe now finally getting to a post ABM world where we're not saying we're doing ABM separately. Just account-based is a way that companies with complex sales cycles are just approaching sales and marketing, period. I hope that we get there from a customer-led growth standpoint as well. What do you think is holding companies back from making this a true culture change as part of the company, how the company operates ongoing as table stakes?
I like your optimism. I think we can often be a little bit, I see a lot of companies, Matt, who still don't understand our account-based marketing. So I think we're, you go to the level of customers who get it. And I think, challenge, accept that, take this on as a challenge to continuously educate. It's the same way that as companies, we think customers understand the impact they're getting from our product. And then you realize that they don't, right? So just be a little skeptical. And then how do we engage customer-led growth? Look, I think the first thing we need to do is figure out how to track it and measure it, because it's so easy to say, oh, that's not so important because, we really just have to think about new leads. But if you actually start to measure, okay, how much influence can marketing? I once had a customer marketer track the influence she had over her sales pipeline through referrals and references, just referrals and references, because it was the easiest to track. $1.6 million in ARR. Right? So that's significant. In a year. So start thinking about how can we measure and track this. And one of the first things we need to do is we need to get customer success teams to stop being measured on NPS. Because I can't get started on NPS because then we'll just take the next 30 minutes and talk about it. But NPS is not the metric.
All right, no, hold on, because I'm going to take you there. So David's comment: in an effort to stay focused, sales is bookings, marketing, leads, customer success, satisfaction, NPS. And so when I see an effort to stay focused, what I also see in this, and we see this a lot, is it's not just to stay focused; it's also an attempt to create simplicity around what we measure. Say, like, the collaboration is hard, so I just want sales to do close deals. I want marketing just to generate leads. I want customer success just to sort of make happy customers. And I think that sometimes that creates, and I don't think this is what David's trying to say, but I don't think that creates silos that prohibit some of what we're talking about here and end up pigeonholing groups into things that may end up being counterproductive to the results you want. Exactly.
Totally. If you only care about one thing and are measured on one thing, then you're going to do the number of times sales teams close bad deals because they don't care about retention and expansion. And I'm not even going to talk about NPS, because NPS does not, if you measure your NPS, you will not correlate it to retention and expansion. There have been studies that show that they do not correlate. So you can be you can get a great NPS score from a customer, one person at your company, and guess what? The decision maker is pulling it out. The CFO is cutting it. You don't rely on it because you will have blinders on. So we want to think about revenue, right? Revenue is predictable when your customers are getting impact, when you can actually prove the ROI or the results or the impact to your customers. Yep. And then if you actually align on impact across the full customer journey, and I'm talking about marketing, sales, onboarding, renewals, if you align on generating impact for your customers, you will achieve all those things. And you just have to, I get it. You don't want sales helping onboard your clients. That's not a good thing, but you want role clarity. And how you get role clarity is just by mapping out that process. What does our customer experience, our customer journey actually look like? Who is going to be responsible for that? And how can we have other supporting roles?
I love that you said I'm not going to talk about NPS and then proceeded to give a rant on NPS. And I feel like we could spend a lot more time on this.
So frustrating.
It's all good. It's all good. I do want to talk a little bit about, okay, so a lot of things that are broken, a lot of lack of focus in the right places, organizations. We're hearing more people use this phrase customer-led growth as a kind of a rallying cry for driving these initiatives forward and getting them momentum across departments. I think you probably talked to 10 people that have heard of that phrase and they may have 10 different definitions. Like how, if you're thinking about customer-led growth, and again, we're doing this here late September, a lot of companies going into planning for 2024, no matter what you think the market's doing, like everyone's looking for ways to drive more efficient growth. What is customer-led growth and why should companies be paying more attention to it?
So we got to think about customer-led growth in a couple different ways. There's growth from your existing customer base. So that's where your pool of customers is, potential new revenue through expansion and, expansion sales. So that's one bucket. The other bucket is through advocacy, and advocacy can be complicated. There's all these different things, social media, We can even think about it as referrals, references, content like stories. And then also like the biggest, easiest win is when your champion goes to a new company, right? And I think there's some new tools out there, even, that I think LinkedIn has a good tool where you can just track that piece and be on it like, as fast as possible. But really simple things like, and I think this is probably more for the customer success team, but marketing can probably help because of some of the different tools that you have at your disposal.
Mm-hmm.
But when a new executive, when a new decision maker, or when a new senior influencer joins a company that's one of your clients, we have to be on that because that's also revenue protection. And a lot of the times customer success teams get surprised by new leadership. And there's a lot you can do around that as well.
So I want to throw our last poll question up here. And again, so Julie doesn't like that we're calling it a poll because you can't push a button, but you can answer A, B, C, or D. Customer-led growth, no matter what you call it, even if you don't call it a name, for what we're talking about here today of rallying the organization around a coordinated, predictable, repeatable effort to drive growth for your company, growth in sales and revenue, by leveraging those customer relationships. Where are you in that continuum? Are you doing this forever? You're doing it, but it's not working super well. You're thinking about it. You're skeptical that this is actually something that can work, which is totally fine as well. Just curious to hear where people are at. And I mean, Julie, again, you're doing this every day. When you hear from companies, do companies come to you and say, we need help doing this? Are you having to convince companies that they should be sort of making this a priority? Like, what's the state of companies relative to customer-led growth right now?
I would say every company that I speak with, when I talk about this concept around customer-led growth,
mm-hmm.
I usually get, oh man, we need to be doing this. Like,
mm-hmm.
Please help, because we don't know where to start.
Right.
And also just like, I haven't even thought about it in that way. This whole concept of your customers being your biggest source of revenue driving is often a new concept that people are like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about that. Where do we get started?
Yeah. Really interesting to see. I'm going to put the poll back up just to see where people are at. Lots of A's and B's, couple C's. I don't see a D yet. So if anyone is sort of skeptical, that's fine too.
I feel like they don't want to jump in after my whole NPS rant.
This is a safe place for everybody, no matter where we're at. It's all good. But I think one of the things that is you start to explore these opportunities, like think about those places where marketing and CS can work together to create better programs that provide a more seamless, consistent experience for your customer as well. Like having a shared understanding of who your ideal targets are, right? Having a shared understanding of what the buying journey turns into a user journey and continues as well. And maybe this is a good time to throw up the proverbial bow tie, Julie, that sort of, lots of companies have a version of this. I know Winning by Design has a really strong version of this. When you think about the acquisition stages as they lead to expansion stages, to really not just say, okay, here's a pretty multicolored bow tie, but like, what is your What is the experience you are creating for customers at each of these stages? And we could have a whole hour-long conversation, onboarding value realized about each of these, but just curious to get your perspective on this.
Well, I actually just want to know, for the marketers who are here today, where do you play? Where are you involved in this? I did like a whole day workshop once on like just about like thinking about how do you get involved as marketers and onboarding. So where do you play right now? Are you on it? Are you obviously you're in awareness, probably some education. Like, if you just look at the right-hand side, are you involved? And then also, do you have a customer advocate, like a customer marketer on your team? Super curious about that. I think that, we see, I would challenge everyone listening today to take some time and just think about at each of these moments across my customer journey and across this bow tie, how can my marketing team help? And just challenge yourself to ask that. What's critical at each of these stages? What are some of the challenges that my colleagues are having at these stages? And could we help? And then go one step further and say, if we were to help, how would we be measured? Right? And think about it as like marketing is all about driving revenue. Okay, so if your onboarding program could improve by 10% or 20%, and you could get more companies to onboard faster, or make sure that more companies made it through onboarding to first impact, what would that do to revenue? And and defining what that first impact is, and helping on different initiatives. So often our customers are only using one aspect of our product. Well, they're at risk, right? They're at risk if they're only using a portion of what you can do. And so what can marketing do to share stories and to help educate? There's an education element on that use and impact or value realized, sort of that growth phase, right? Talk about how other customers are achieving different use cases and different impact that your customers maybe don't even know about. So I think there's a lot that you can do there, not even talking about advocacy, which we've chatted a lot about already.
Yeah. We could spend a whole hour just on a number of these areas. I think the onboarding one is a big one for me. Is people are so excited and a little nervous about what they just signed up for, and the experience they have in those first few moments, days, what have you, is really going to set the stage for the relationship you have. A good question here from Stephanie around sort of a messaging strategy for customer-led growth. Any guidance on frameworks? And this may be something that we can follow up with Stephanie as well.
We need to follow up because I'm not sure I fully understand the question in order to effectively answer it. But just in terms of, don't be too markety. That's a really big one. You're talking to customers, you're speaking with people who've already been bought in. Yeah. So, keep it real as much as you can. One of my most successful campaigns, to customers was one where we just drafted an email from the CEO, around, a new product. I think it was a new product launch or a price increase. It was send an email from the CEO, right? Super casual. Hey, so-and-so. And then we followed up with their customer success manager forwarding that email from the CEO. Hey, just want to make sure you saw this email from our CEO, blah, blah, blah. I want you to take advantage of this. There was no marketing-esque, no images, like nothing fancy. Right. But it was my most successful, revenue driving campaign from a customer success perspective, and marketing helped with that, right? Because you have the tools to do those types of communications at scale.
So you're saying in an age of AI that being human is more important than ever, right? That expressing our humanity and sort of being even more approachable, more casual, more empathetic is part of doing this well. I'm asking this kind of facetiously, but I think too often, like, we start writing like we're corporate entities and things get over edited to be way too formal, and sometimes people just want to be met where they are.
Yeah, the best thing that AI has is, hey, can you rewrite this in a more casual, empathetic tone?
Yeah, I
that feature.
Yeah, I think you still get C- copy from AI today. Hopefully that improves. I think we still need artists and craftspeople to sort of make that better. And sometimes to, I think the more time you take on something, the more authentic you can make it. Mark Twain said, if I'd had more time, I'd have written a shorter letter. And so less is more, and writing the right thing. Okay, I want to take a hard turn from the messaging approach side and talk about data. Because if you think about, like, how do you do this well? How do you make sure there's a seamless experience? There has to be continuity of what you know about that customer and the relationship. So how do you ensure data across platform? Well, first of all, why is that important? And then what does that unlock, I think, for companies to create a better customer experience?
Data, there's two common themes that I see when I start working with a company. One, their data is in terrible shape. We'll have two sources of truth for data. One, typically, sort of, maybe sometimes three sources of truth. So finance has a source of truth, sales will have a source of truth, and sometimes customer success will have their own source of truth. So we got to align on that, and we have to get our systems to speak to each other.
Yep.
A lot of times customer success doesn't even have access to the CRM, and the CRM isn't necessarily speaking to the CS tool. Like, that's a big problem. Aligning on metrics. I'm going to go back. Like, think about sales and marketing. In order to even get started, you have to have alignment around what's an MQL definition, what's an SQL, what's an SQL, like, what are all those defined as? We need to do the same thing in the world of customer success, defining those metrics and then tracking them. What does successful onboarding mean, and how do we track it? So two metrics I use there. How long does it take to onboard, and how many of your customers are successfully making it to what we're going to define as first impact, and measure it. I'll put it at 2% of companies that I've worked with in the last decade as a consultant have actually tracked that before working with me. They have no idea. If you don't know how many of your customers are making it through that first stage of your customer journey, then how do you know, how do you even know what's happening next? And then again, aligning on, the other various metrics around expansion and upsell. And, taking a step back and saying, what goes into a successful, if you think about where you do your persona work and when you try to identify what's your ideal customer profile, we also have to think about, what does a customer need to do, and what does that look like in order for us to actually be able to upsell them? Right. And so what does that almost like new ICP look like? How are they using our products? What impact are they getting? Who's involved at the customer? So we can start to understand what that looks like before we go and do, a great expansion initiative.
I have some questions here about rewarding customer loyalty. You don't want to create it to the point where it feels like a bribe. You don't want to sort of necessarily get it where it's pay for performance. But can you talk about referral programs? Talk about, sometimes companies say, "Oh, I'll give you 5% if you refer someone to us." What are some tactics and strategies you've seen work relative to rewarding loyalty?
Yeah, it can be a tough one. You don't want it to feel like you're bribing. I hear you on that. But the worst is when you have a customer who's an amazing advocate and you don't recognize them. And so tracking the advocacy that your customers do is really, really important. And surprise and delight is always the way to go, right? If you, as opposed to there's sort of two ways to think about it. So you don't want to bribe. So if you can do surprise and delight for a great customer, they did this thing for you, send them a really great gift, a personalized gift, send them, shout out to them at your next customer. Like, there's lots of things that you can do around that. You can also use it as a trade at the, in the sales process, right? If they're going hard on discounting, well then, negotiate in, okay, we're going to give you a discount, but in order for you to get that discount, you're going to give us some advocacy. You're going to be a referenceable customer for us. You're going to do a case study after you've been using us for 8 months. And you're going to give us 10 referrals, right? You're asking for this, so you're going to help us here. So that's one way to do it in the upfront on the sales side. And then I really don't like that if you give us a referral, we will give you this. It doesn't really feel, I agree, it doesn't feel that great, but there are different programs involved, like the one that we did at Influitive, where we tracked it and there were points and you could redeem for points and things like that. There's definitely programs like that out there. I think recognition goes a really long way.
Yeah, just let them be helping be seen. Just, I mean, this, you can't say thank you enough. You can't recognize people enough, and that costs next to nothing.
Proactive, right? Like they don't have to give you things before you give them things,
Right.
right? Why not celebrate their wins? Send them something, amazing. Give them a shout out, give them an infographic, like something, promote them to their boss. Right? That's actually one of my favorite tactics. This isn't so, marketing can help by giving some of the assets and the resources for your customer success team, or by doing it in a more automated fashion. So when a customer goes live, we celebrate that moment in a public, not like an a company-wide public way. Can you say, send notes to their boss and say, hey, been working with, so-and-so for the last 8 months and they're amazing. What boss doesn't like to hear that their person's amazing, and what person doesn't like to hear, their boss to hear that they're amazing?
Yeah.
That doesn't cost them anything.
Exactly. Hey, we're getting close to the end here. Keeping an eye on the chat if there's any other questions that people have they want to address with us here. The last thing I think I wanted to make sure we proactively addressed or talked about is this idea of customer communities. I've been a part of some on both sides a number of times through the years. I know that they can be both a source of great delight as well as great consternation for companies that are managing them. What's your perspective on customer communities, and what should people think about if they're either have one or are thinking about building one?
Communities are really, really powerful. I would say tap into an existing community if you can. Better to have people already where they are. So I think if you can do that, it's going to be easier. Starting a community is freaking hard. So hard that you're like calling. I remember literally picking up the phone and calling customers and saying, hey, could you ask a question in our community? And then calling 3 other customers, hey, can you answer this question? So it is a very challenging platform to take off. And so, as you said, it's really powerful. And especially as there's a shift towards product-led growth, communities are how you support those customers and how you engage with them. And so, if you can make it engaging, make it the place to be, that exclusive party that everyone wants to be at, and, that there's value there, but getting it started is hard. So, can you find out where your customers, spend their time and show up there as much as possible versus starting your own thing would be my recommendation. Can I give like a tip, like a takeaway that you could literally start implementing tomorrow?
You can literally do whatever you want right now.
True. Can I swear? Like, is there a bleeping thing?
I mean, we're live on LinkedIn, so I don't know if that's going to like 86 us. So
do a beep when you.
I don't have that power. I don't think.
That would be like a worthwhile thing to invest.
Oh, I want to hold, like, as we keep doing these, I'm going to get a soundboard. So we have sound effects if we have features, and those features have certain like intro music.
I like it.
I know Michelle's listening. I want a soundboard. Maria, I want an LED sign, and then I want a soundboard. Okay, sorry. Julie, go ahead.
So referrals are really hard. I want to give a tip on referrals because I think everyone says, oh, I want to launch this referral campaign. And like, if you want to do referrals and you want to launch a campaign, you're maybe doing referrals in 6 months from now. So here is something you can literally end today and like go and do tomorrow. If you say to them, hey, like look through their LinkedIn connections. This is not scalable, but it is unbelievably effective. And sometimes we need to do not so scalable things for like, that's kind of what account-based marketing is, right? It's not super scalable, but it's super effective. So you go to your customers, you look through their connections and you find people, prospects who you want to connect with. And then you say to your customer, hey, I'd love a referral to these people. It'd be amazing if you can do it. If not, can I just drop your name? Take all the work out of it. And then you're doing all the work because you're motivated to do that. And they don't have to do it and you're not relying on them for it. So it's a really powerful way to get, I call it the backdoor referral, because you're doing all of that work for them. And all you're doing is saying, hey, your colleague or, this person who is using us. Maybe even ask if you can use a stat, right? They've been using us for 3 years and they've been getting, helping achieve blah, blah, blah. And, they thought maybe you'd want to benefit. Can we set up a call? Really effective. It's like that warm-ish lead, kind of a referral, where you didn't have to lean on your customer and wait for them to do the work for you.
It's such great advice. I think too often people just say, "Hey, will you think of us?" Like if you think of us, I love referrals. Now you put all the work on them. You're making them decide when they hear something, making them listen for something, as opposed to say, like, "How about this guy? Can you refer me to? Can I get this person?" And also, you know what? How about I just do it for you, and I'll say so and so said I should call you, and so we'd be great for
Yeah,
this.
or can I copy you on the email?
Exactly. Speaking of this, just as we wrap up, Achieve Exponential Growth. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing now and how you can help companies?
Yeah, thank you. Oh man, coming up with a company name, like if you have a last name like Heinz, it's a lot easier.
Oh,
Persofsky does not like flow off the tongue, but I'll say like the biggest thing I want to focus on is helping companies leverage their existing customer base and helping them. Exponential growth comes from when you continuously renew a customer over and over again. If your payback period is 18 months, if you renew them for that second, that third term, that's profitability. And then if you can upsell and increase their spend with you, that's where you get exponential growth from. And that's where I'm really focusing on with companies and helping them set up their processes and their teams to support that.
awesome. Well, we'll make sure everyone has your contact information in the follow-up for this. But I think for now, just want to thank Jeff, Stephanie, Andrew, Nancy, Jared, Rial, number of people that were joining us today and commenting and being active. So thank you all so much. Julie, we're excited to work more closely with you as well. We've been for the last, 14, 15 years, we've been very focused on pipeline and thinking about predictable pipeline as net new. And clearly this is, I'll throw it back up, the opportunity for companies is the entire bow tie, not just the left-hand side. And so just excited to continue to tap into your expertise and work together with you to sort of help companies take advantage of all this.
Can we talk a little bit about what we're doing together?
Let's do it.
Yeah, because I'm like really excited about this. So, we chatted a while ago, and about how, hey, I think I said, hey, how are new leads? How's account base going with new leads? And like, it's slow, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we had a really great brainstorming conversation around what if we could do a similar program to your, I might say around predictable revenue. What is it? Predictable
pipeline.
Pipeline.
Sure.
Plan
Yeah.
For existing customers, right?
Yeah.
So like, can we help companies who would normally think about doing an ABM, like a lead gen ABM strategy? Can we help them create the same process, same predictable pipeline through customer-led growth? And I'm really excited to do this because it's been sort of a, like a wish list item for me of how can we do this more and tap into marketers' wealth of knowledge and experience and creativity to do some of this. And I had the benefit of doing this. I worked when I was working with Jim Williams at Influitive, he and I worked and collaborated, and True Mintang, who was head of customer marketing. We did so much around this at Influitive, and it was so much of our growth. Like, I'm not kidding. We outsold sales in account management and customer success consistently. And we had great programs. And so I'm really excited to bring this to some other companies with you.
Yeah, I am as well. I think this is what people need. This is, I think we continue to move away from media spend as the coin of the realm for marketers. I think better data, better insight, better relationships with your customers. This is going to be more solid footing for companies driving more predictable, repeatable growth, not just predictable pipeline, but predictable, repeatable growth overall. So yeah, super excited. If you want to learn more about that, if this is interesting to you, didn't mean this to be a sales pitch, but definitely want to make sure people are able to take advantage. Feel free to reach out to us. Let us know if you're interested. We are starting to do some workshops around this as well. So let us know if you're interested in either sort of a group workshop we might do around this, or if you want to do something within your company, we can do that as well. But Julie, thanks again for doing this with us, and excited to continue the journey with you.
Same, and thank you. Thanks for hosting and helping launch Achieve Exponential Growth. And I think this is my first official announcement of the company. And thanks everyone for attending.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. Look forward to talking again soon. We'll see you next time. Bye.